Hello, good evening. Today I'm going to talk about a tough topic. It's a topic that has taken the nation by storm. I'm talking about the murdering, the killing of Charlie Kirk today. It's brought a lot of feelings up to a lot of people. Um, I personally don't have a lot of interest in discussing what I consider to have been a very meaningless, a very wasted life, the one that he led. I think his arrogance and his youth led him on the wrong path. But it does open up a space publicly, a public discursive space to be able to talk about issues of people's words, what is opinion, what is acceptable opinion, what I like to call the acceptable Venn diagram or the Venn diagram of acceptable political opinion in a liberal democracy. What is acceptable and what isn't acceptable? Some people have a conception that everything is acceptable, a totally libertarian viewpoint that everything is acceptable and others don't. But lost in this, I see a lot of Latinos, which really drives me crazy, but I'm trying to approach it in the most diplomatic way possible. It drives me crazy to see Latinos and African Americans and people showing, this over, what's the word? This performative ritual online of expressing, rest in peace sympathy for a man who would not have cared for them. And I think it's born out of ignorance. It's born out of people not knowing more than it is born out of people's good nature. We'll get to that. I'm going to leave that to the end of the video. The first thing I want to do with this video, I did some research. I spent about an hour collecting quotes and historical information about Charlie Kirk that most people don't know. His early past. Kirk's classmates described him as rude, as arrogant, and as someone with a superiority complex. He called teachers with whom he disagreed neo-Marxists and often was belligerent in class. I don't understand what is this neo-Marxist label. I think most people that use the label Marxist have absolutely no idea what Marxism is, let alone to be able to differentiate what is neo-Marxism. What do they mean by that? It's just a catch-all term that conservatives use to basically label anybody who disagree with their usually very greedy policies to accumulate all wealth in the hands of white elites. So anybody who's in disagreement with that is a neo-Marxist because they really don't know how to explain it. Ask a conservative to explain to you what's neo-Marxist, and they'll probably reply or regurgitate something that has absolutely nothing to do with economic policies or even structures of government. They have no conception about this. That's been my experience as a political science expert for the last 25, 30 years since I graduated. I'm 46 now. I graduated when I was 21 or 22, and I have never met one single conservative who, when I asked them, what is Marxism or what's communism or what's neo-Marxism, they have absolutely no idea. The terminology that they use to describe it is completely irrelevant to the issue. More on Kirk. As he headed toward graduation, Kirk was denied entry into West Point, one of the most selective universities in America, with an acceptance rate of 12%. Kirk, however, claimed his rejection was because he was passed over for a far less qualified candidate of a different gender and a different persuasion. What did he mean by different persuasion? We know what he meant by different gender. He basically meant that he was more qualified than the women there, without knowing at all, without any evidence, if the women who were chosen, of those 12% that were chosen into West Point, were actually qualified women. Why couldn't women be qualified or more qualified than him? And what is this, different persuasion? That's called dog whistle terms. That means I don't want to say different race. A person who's not white like him. He could not accept that there could be a person of color or that there was a woman that could be smarter than him and be chosen to West Point. So instead of saying, well, I wasn't smart enough to enter West Point, he basically made the argument, the racist and the sexist argument, that I was passed over by somebody who was less qualified and they were a woman or they were a person of color. Different persuasion. I want you guys to start, accumulating everything I'm telling you so you can have an idea of who is Charlie Kirk, and then we're going to get to him in a moment. Kirk briefly attended Harper College, a community college near Chicago, but dropped out and never completed a degree. We're talking about a guy who couldn't cut it at a community college. He never graduated. He spent from his 20s all the way to his 31st birthday, which is when he passed away. He was murdered today. Spent 11 of his years, and in those 11 years, we're going to get to that, he grew to great prominence. He wasn't just a nobody. Grew to increasing great political power in the United States, essentially doing nothing of any value to any other human being. Everything he did was basically aggrandize himself and aggrandize his institution, Turning Point USA, and convert it into a racist Christian nationalist organization. And I'm not saying this alone. Like I said, I've researched this for about an hour. I knew this already, but I spent an hour researching and getting this material, the best morsels for this video, so that people can understand what he did in the last 10 years. And it was just basically harmful to other people. He never helped a single person in the United States. And his 31 years of life, all he did was have resentment because he was a white man that couldn't cut it at West Point or at Harper's College, and then use that resentment as anger fuel to be able to develop a organization of racist and sexist and homophobic viewpoints, and a lot more. We're going to get to that. Kirk, 30, grew up in Wheeling, a suburb of Chicago, where he attended a school which in the course of his childhood switched from being mostly white to majority black, Latino, and Asian. The experience of being cast into the minority had a profound effect on the young Reagan-obsessed, or he was obsessed with Reagan, Kirk. According to Kyle Spencer, author of Raising Them Right, which chronicles the rise of Turning Point. So the best person who's done investigations on Charlie Kirk says that basically one of the things that formed his anger and hatred was seeing how he became a minority in his own school system. He couldn't accept that. We're talking about white resentment. I can't accept basically what they want people of color to accept. They want white people, people of color to accept permanent minority status, permanent disenfranchised, and permanent second or third or fourth class status under the whites. But when he had to endure being a minority and not being a person of the majority, in his particular experience, it marked him. It traumatized him. It almost always happens like that. It's a trauma of the past that fuels the anger and the racial animus, the racial hatred that then they showcase other people. Kyle Spencer writes, his rage really seems to have originated with this idea that he was seeing his power base dwindle. Over time, Spencer qualified her initial glowing report card for Kirk. She writes, he had increasing rage, and as he became more famous, he became more open about expressing it. White supremacist ideas, disdain for feminism, and what disturbed me most, his comfort with authoritarianism. So we're starting to see a picture that this guy grows up being a kid who starts hating women, starts hating people of color, starts resenting not being in a power position, resents the fact that he was not accepted into West Point, resents the fact that he couldn't cut it even in a community college. And instead of saying, I am at fault, I am the mediocre person, this person blames everyone else. This is the fuel. This is the foundation. This is why it's important to internalize who was Charlie Kirk at an early age. We need to understand what caused what later came, okay? It's very important. That's why I've structured this in a way so that we understand the building blocks. If you want to understand a racist or a fascist or an authoritarian, you almost always have to go back to the beginning and find out what were the traumatic incidents that led them to hate women or led them to hate people of color, because normal human beings don't hate each other just to hate them. Normal human beings don't spend 10 years of their life building a political organization with the express purpose of dominating and subjugating other social groups. That comes from hate. People like Charlie Kirk, people like Stephen Miller, who is the ideologue behind the Trump administration, people like that, and there are many, have trauma and resentment. And it's almost always racial white privilege resentment, or losing what they believe is white privilege. Let's continue. These are actual quotes and topics from Charlie Kirk on a whole bunch of different issues. On other cultures, words of Charlie Kirk. It drives the left nuts when you say this, that all men are created equal in the eyes of God, all men and women, but not all cultures are created equal, Kirk said. To say that, you get attacked in every direction. But excuse me when I say that Western civilization is the best that humanity has produced. It's an outgrowth of the Bible. I think a whole bunch of other cultures in the world would beg to differ. Who is to say that Western civilization is the only or best civilization? I think the Japanese would like a word, considering they're extremely clean, extremely organized, extremely honorable culture. Same thing with other Asian populations. I can understand the criticisms that there are some cultures in the world that are socially or in value-wise behind other cultures, but I find it extremely racist to make the argument that white civilization is the one that's best above all the other cultures, and that it's because it's an outgrowth of the Bible. So on top of the racism, we have religious discrimination. So if you're Buddhist, you're behind the Bible. If you're a Muslim, you're behind the Bible. If you're Jewish, you're behind the Bible. If you're a practitioner of African traditional religions, you're really behind. From the other comments that he believed in, you would really be behind, and you're gonna guys get to see that. So we're talking about a person who's traumatized by women, traumatized by people of color, believes white civilization is the top one, and believes everything else is behind white civilization. Continue. He has argued that the proper Christian view on immigration is not to welcome the stranger because foreigners can become your masters. So we have a man that even when he espouses Christian theology as supreme, because he was a Christian nationalist, he completely bastardizes Jesus' message about being the Good Samaritan and being good to your neighbors and being good to others. So this is not Christian. This is Kirk beliefs. That has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. It's him taking Christian beliefs, or what he thinks is Christian beliefs, and then putting his own viewpoints to this. Here about Mandami in New York. When New York City mayoral candidate Soran Mandani ate biryani with his fingers, which is a normal practice in India, where his parents are from, Kirk used it to imply that the Muslim politician cannot be a real American because we have utensils. We have a very clear xenophobic and racist statement. The argument that if anybody else is less than Americans if they don't use utensils, when in many parts of the world, for certain foods, particular foods, and it's hilarious too, because here in the United States, we have things called finger foods. You know, it's not the first. I've performed as a musician in many upscale, completely white events and Martha's Vineyard and other places where basically top elite, moneyed whites in the United States, congregate. And they eat finger food too. I've seen plenty of white people going to a table of hors d'oeuvres and grabbing, a shrimp and eating fish and eating olives and eating things. And nobody said that they're backwards because of that. But he used that moment to make fun of Mandami and to insinuate he wasn't a true American because he didn't use utensils. Another xenophobic and racist statement. That's Charlie Kirk for you. Let's continue. If you want to properly, this is another quote of Kirk, if you want to properly understand the left, you must understand intersectionality. What do the Palestinian pro-Hamas people have to do with the white, liberal, purple-haired jihadis, and then also with La Raza folks, with BLM? They all hate Christendom. They hate Western civilization. They hate what we have built. This is a global movement of freaks and misanthropes, anti-Israel, anti-West, anti-America, anti-capitalism, anti-law, anti-order, and it all comes together. The same people that are doing the Gaza encampments are the same people that are now waving the La Raza Mexican flag. It is order versus anarchy. It is chaos versus structure. It is against everything that we believe in the West, everything. Let's unpack that. Why is it that if you're a person who believes in defending the rights of Mexican American citizens here, people like in the Raza movement, or Black Lives Matter people, black people who simply want their rights as human beings to be respected, why do they hate Christianity, Christendom? Why does that make them hate Western civilization? What is Western civilization? And his viewpoint that he would say that these people hate Western civilization because they're defending the rights to be human beings. They hate what we have built. Why? These people live in the United States and they work here and they build things themselves. They're part of the society. Why would they hate what they're living in? It says they're anti-Israel. Maybe they are. Maybe they're anti the Israeli abuse of the Palestinians. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. They're anti-West. Why would be the anti-West? Where does he get this idea that just because you believe that there are established systemic institutions of racism in the United States, past and present, that means that you hate the West? He mentions that they're anti-America. Why? What exactly do these people do that it is anti-America? He mentions that they're anti-capitalist. Maybe some are. Maybe they believe that some of capitalism's excesses need to be reined in. What's wrong with that? What's wrong? There's socialist beliefs in Norway, in Denmark, in Finland, in Iceland. We have 75 socialist programs here in the United States. Medicare, Section 8, SNAP food benefits, workers' compensation, unemployment benefits, Pell Grants, food stamps, SNAP benefits. The military, the police, the national parks, the highways. Oh, so that socialism is okay. Would that be anti-capitalist to believe in those programs? What would have Charlie Kirk said to them? I mean, let's take this entire comment in context of what he was saying. And he says, these are the same people that are doing the Gaza encampments. What is wrong with people taking time of their life to worry about the human rights of people who are suffering and who are essentially being genocided? 90% of their entire infrastructure destroyed, over 60,000 of them killed, mostly children and innocent people. Very little of them actual Hamas combatants. So if you're a person who believes in the human rights of another person in the other side of the world, and you also believe in waving La Raza Mexican flag, so you believe in Mexican-American rights and culture, that means that you are anarchy. He calls it is order versus anarchy. So being order means limiting the expression of people who are Mexicans or who are Gazan people, basically hiding that, destroying that, silencing that type of activism and free speech in the United States. And anarchy is actually believing in the human rights of Palestinians or the human rights of black people, black BLM, or the human rights of Mexican Americans. That's anarchy. He mentions that's chaos versus structure. It is against everything we believe in the West. What is it that we believe in the West? Because he claims that there's this overarching belief of a West. Who are these people who are believing in the West? What does he mean by it is against everything that we believe? Who are these we? Who is he speaking about? It's pretty obvious. The we is his conception of whiteness, of his white people. Because not all white people believe like him. Thank God. But he does believe that there's a certain subset of white people, particularly those that are attracted to the MAGA movement, to the fascist MAGA movement, that believe that there's a particular, cookie cutter explanation to the West. And this cookie cutter version, which is important for the rest of the video, is based on the idea of white supremacy and Christian nationalist supremacy. You got to be a Christian nationalist, white supremacist. That's the type of white person that he believes is part of the we that believe in the West. That's his conception of the West. The West is the Christian nationalist white supremacist society. If you don't believe in that, you are part of the anarchy and the chaos that needs to be overwhelmed or destroyed by the structure that he's talking about. This is important to understand because this is important to understand the mindset of this person. We'll get to that at the end of the video. Another quote. We want our country back and we have a big heart. We have that open, oh yes, we're going to take care of everybody. But as it says in the Bible, we're going to build a wall like it says in the book of Nehemiah. And we're going to build it strong. And we're going to build it high. And if you do not assimilate, and if you are an agent of disorder, of chaos, or confusion, adios, hasta la vista, baby. We will find you and your family, and we will return you all 20, 25, 30 million. Every single one of you are going back. Who are the 20 or 30 million he's speaking about? He's talking about me. He's talking about you. Yes, you, Rivera, Ramirez, Gonzalez, Milano, Perez. All of you, everybody here that has a Latino background. You're Dominican, he's talking about you. Are you Cuban? He's talking about you. Are you Puerto Rican? He's talking about you. Mexican, you. Salvador, you. Colombia, you. Ecuador, you. Peru, you. Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, Venezuela. You, and you. He's talking about you. if it was up to him, to this guy who was killed today, he would send every single one of you going back. For every Latino that I've seen online expressing, may he rest in peace. That's who you're expressing resting in peace to. The guy who said he would like to send every single one of you and your family to persecute you. We will find you and your family and we will return you, all 30 million of you. He didn't mean that other Latino, not me. I got U.S. citizenship. No, he means you. He and people like Stephen Miller mean you, because Stephen Miller was very clear that first they were going to start with illegals and then they were going to go for the homegrowns. Those were his words. They even tried to remove birthright citizenship. And the next step after that is to remove citizenship for certain people that already have naturalized citizens. He called it. He said that. Stephen Miller said they were going after naturalized citizens. If you were an immigrant one day, but you became a citizen, a naturalized citizen, they're coming for you. The Charlie Kirks and the Stephen Millers, with same mindset, don't think that, Stephen Miller's bad, but Charlie was a saint. No, they thought the same exact things. And Charlie Kirk said this. All 30 million, just like Stephen Miller. They're part of the same organization, the same MAGA fascist movement. They support the same president, the same structure, and the same philosophies, the same Project 2025 idea and program. This is who you Latinos that have been seeing on Facebook saying, oh, may he rest in peace, what a tragedy. This is who you're talking about. Let's continue. On language, Kirk went on to point out that about 22% of U.S. households speak a language other than English at home. He had a preoccupation with people speaking other languages. He couldn't stand that other people could speak any other language. Everything had to be English. So if you speak any other type of language, guess what? Kirk didn't like that. He didn't like you. You're bilingual, you're trilingual, he didn't like you. Continuing on. On Native Americans, there was not exactly a lot of civilization when the first people came to Missouri, Kirk said. Is that an immigrant or a settler? It's more of a settling. It's a mindset of going to the frontier, using the Homestead Act to get the land that you can see. Yeah, except that land belonged to other people. Oh, you see that Kirk didn't see those people as having any worth. He completely would gloss over when he was talking about the issue of settlers, about the fact that in order to get this land, this settle, you first have to take people who were there away from that land. So if you're a Native American or you're somebody who appreciates a Native American, that's his viewpoint on Native Americans. They were subhumans that were not even to be counted. They didn't exist there. It was just a blank space for the Homestead Act. Continuing on. On the issue of Christianity, become one of the nation's most prominent voices. He basically became one of the most prominent voices calling on Christians to view conservative political activism as central to Jesus' calling for their lives. Stop there for a second. Charlie thought that the central activism or the central calling of the lives of people who are Christians was to become a conservative political activist. That's the only way to be a Christian. You can't be a centrist. You can't be a progressive Christian. You got to be a conservative political Christian in order to fulfill Jesus' calling for you in your life. By 2022, he was falsely claiming that separation of church and state was a fabrication made up by secular humanists, parentheses. In fact, it was made up by Thomas Jefferson. So he was against separation of church and state. So I take that personally. I'm sure other people take it personally if they have other religion. I don't practice Christianity. Why should I be forced to be made to live in a society where I have to live under the domination of another religion? That's one of the reasons why this country was founded by a lot of the European migrants, because they were fleeing the religious persecution in Europe. So why are we creating this religious persecution here in the United States? If you have any doubts about what his beliefs were, religious-wise, was to impose Christianity on everybody here. Point blank. He's calling it the central calling for their lives. And he clearly went against the separation of church and state. He did not like it and accused secular humanists of being behind church or state. This is the person that you were expressing sympathy for today? Let's continue. Charlie Kirk believes in the Christian nationalist concept of the Seven Mountains Mandate. which calls on far right, meaning far right is a nice term for Nazi, for fascist Christians, to control not just all government, but media, business, and education. This idea drove many of the rioters to the Capitol on January 6th, where some displayed appeal to heaven flags to demonstrate their belief in total Christian right domination. These people don't want to live in a shared multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy where we all have our rights to our viewpoints and you don't dominate me, I don't dominate you. No, they want to dominate. This is not a political opinion where, this is what I believe, but hey, I respect your right to disagree with me or something. No, there is no respect to disagree. I want to dominate you. I am a Christian nationalist. I want to own all of government, all the media, all business, and all education. And you get the scraps. And you live under what I give you. This is the mindset. This is the program. The Christian nationalist concept of the 7 Mountains Mandate. Go ahead and Google it and read it. Read about the 7 Mountains Mandate. Charlie Kirk was a strong proponent of it and used his Turning Point USA platform to continually propagandize about the situation, manipulate the minds of people who are gullible, ignorant, and don't study, and don't have an intellectual framework to break this down. Thank God I went to university to study, to critically read, and to accumulate knowledge and be able to see through these frauds. But a lot of people in this country, millions and millions of people in this country don't have the capacity. And this is dangerous. This is the guy that a lot of people were saying, rest in peace. Oh my goodness, so sad. He didn't care about you. He would have dominated you if he was alive. If he had power, he would be like Trump. People like him, Trump, Stephen Miller, they are there to dominate you. You are not, unless you are a white supremacist, a European descendant, and you believe in white supremacists, and you believe in Christian nationalism, if you're not part of that group, and particularly moneyed white supremacist and Christian nationalists, he's not there for you. He wasn't there for you. You are not part of the dominating group. You are the dominated. My apologies if I become passionate about this issue, but it bothers me that we act or we say things based on a lack of knowledge. Let's continue reading. Kirk devoted a chunk of his podcast to honoring the influential evangelical pastor John MacArthur, who passed away on July 4th at the age of 86. Kirk called him one of the most influential Protestant minds since the Reformation and a legend who never bowed to the gods of this age and never apologized for Scripture. Soaring language, but it's a euphemism. One of MacArthur's most famous old-fashioned beliefs was that slavery was godly. In 2001, MacArthur delivered an infamous sermon at his California megachurch. He argued that black people are cursed by God to be servile people who are doomed to perpetual slavery. There have been twisted efforts to rationalize what he said here, but the context of his entire sermon made his meaning quite clear. He's invoking an argument that white Southerners used in the 19th century, claiming black people were descended from the biblical figure of Canaan, Noah's grandson, and who was cursed by God in the book of Genesis to be a servant of servants. MacArthur claimed the descendants of Canaan populated Africa and carried this curse with them. The favorite pastor of Charlie Kirk believed it was the destined obligation of black people to be slaves. If you are a person of Afro-American descent or African descent and you express sympathy for Charlie Kirk, in his heart of hearts and his favorite pastor, believed that you should be his slave forever in perpetuity. Are you still expressing empathy and sympathy for this man? Let's continue. On homosexuality, he denounced the LGBTQ agenda and equated homosexuality with grooming children for sexual abuse. If you are a homosexual person, do you not take offense with him believing that your nature, you being born homosexual, means that you were planning to groom children for sexual abuse, then why are you expressing sympathy and empathy for the death of this man who thinks you're an abomination, who your very existence means that you are grooming children for sexual abuse? His words. His words. Why are people, good, logical, civilized people, good natured, good hearted people, expressing sympathy for this? We're going to continue. On women. He has called on women to forego education and careers so they can instead focus on being submissive housewives. I mean, it's hilarious to read it, because when you read it, you realize he's hitting all the greatest hits of bigotry. He's got great statements on race, on Latinos, great statements on gays, great statement on black people, great statement on immigration, great statements on women. All of them are the absolute wrong statements on everything. There's not a single thing you can go, wow, the guy had a good, elevated, reformed, civilized viewpoint. No. He just thought blacks were slaves, gays are grooming for kids for sexual abuse, and women should be good for being housewives. What a guy. What a guy. Let's continue. 3 weeks ago, this is a statement from Charlie Kirk himself. 3 weeks ago, if we would have said that Joy Reid, Michelle Obama, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist, Kirk said Thursday on his talk show. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us, the far-right commentator continued. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. He added, you had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. We're talking about incredibly intelligent people like Joy Reid, the journalist, Michelle Obama, who, I always told my wife, if there was somebody who impressed me more than Barack Obama, was Michelle Obama. And if I had the choice between the two, not that I hated Barack, I voted for him twice. But if I had the choice between the two, I would have voted for Michelle. I was that impressed with her ability to move people with her speeches and her intelligence. It's undeniable. An undeniably qualified woman in every sense of the word. Beyond qualified, superlatively qualified. Beyond the vast majority of North Americans. Sheila Jackson Lee was an accomplished Afro-American representative. A dignified person. Ketanji Brown Jackson was overqualified as a jurist. She was an extremely intelligent African American woman and a successful one. We're talking about a journalist, the First Lady, a representative of the House of Representatives elected by other people, and one of our Supreme Court justices. 4 people, all who went to actual college, who were superlative in order to get to their positions. When you're a black person, you don't only are good in what you do, you got to be 3 times as good as the white people in order to be considered for a position like Supreme Court justice or journalism, top journalist slot at MSNBC, or First Lady status, or a representative. You got to be a smart person. We're talking about 4 college-educated African-American women who were superlative in their positions being talked down about by a guy who couldn't even cut it at a community college. This is the guy that you express sympathy for. Oh, and by the way, it just so happens that they're 4 black women. Once again, it just so happens that they're black. Seems like this guy has a weird obsession with black people and with women, huh? Let's continue. On race issues, funny enough, Ali Breland of Mother Jones, publication, reported in 2004, Kirk has hosted far-right and white supremacist figures on his podcast and has tweeted in support of whiteness, earning praise from white supremacists. When white supremacists praise you, you're kind of a racist. When white supremacists retweet you, you're kind of a racist. Not only you are the racist. You are one of the top influential racist voices in the world. That's who Charlie Kirk was. He suggested black pilots are unqualified. He blamed the black fire chief in Austin, Texas for flooding deaths that occurred a 3-hour drive away from the city. He denounced the passage of the 1965 Civil Rights Act. Yes, he was against the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Acts of African Americans. He was against that. For everybody who's a black person who voted Republican and who expressed sympathy for his death today, he doesn't believe you should have had political rights. He was against the 1965 Civil Rights Act. And tried to discredit the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He called him awful and not a good person. Dr. King, who was at all times a person who would try to find the humanity and even the people who oppress him. I mean, a person who probably has more tolerance and patience than I do, because I really don't have it. That person was awful. Dr. Martin Luther King, one of our most revered national heroes. He's awful. Who in their right mind would say Dr. Martin Luther King was an awful person? I think the only person that had the moral standing to say you're awful would have been Coretta Scott King, because of what he did in his privacy of his own home. Because we know of his infidelities. Those that have studied the history of Martin Luther King know that at certain times he had infidelity issues in the church. We know that. The only person that can say you're awful for what you did there is Coretta Scott King. And she didn't say that. She never decried or attacked him for that. She forgave him for those things. This man, who has no standing to be calling Dr. Martin Luther King not a good person and awful, decided to do that. So my question for every African American viewer on the screen, and for those people who respected the image of Dr. Martin Luther King, this is the guy that you're going to express sympathy and empathy about his death today? We'll get to that. In 2020, he and his favorite far-right pastor, Rob McCoy, released a podcast in which they denounced Black Lives Matter as malevolent, anti-American, and anti-Christian. Why? What is malevolent about saying Black Lives Matter? My life matter. Pay attention to me. I am tired of being abused. I'm tired of having police profile me. I'm tired of going straight from high school to prison. I'm tired of my communities being destroyed. I'm talking as a hypothetical black person. I'm tired of these things and I want my black life to matter. What is malevolent about that? What is anti-American about that? Exactly how? Anti-Christian, how? Jesus Christ will be the first to stand there with black people when they're being abused by police and defending them from an abuser. Why? These are, it makes you ask the question why. And we know why. Because he's a racist. Because he was a racist. In his short little life, he was a racist. Horrible one, too. That's why he thought Black Lives Matter was malevolent, anti-American, and anti-Christian. During his June 9th broadcast, Charlie Kirk used a chart sourced to the white nationalist organization American Renaissance. The graph shows the decline of the white population in Los Angeles over multiple decades. Kirk displayed the graph after claiming, "This is the Great Replacement Theory," referring to a white nationalist conspiracy theory. And while saying, "You can see the white population collapse in LA. That's intentional. They've wanted it that way." So he believed in the Great Replacement Theory, which is a straight-up racist conspiracy theory. The idea that the Democrat Party is trying to import people from other countries so that they can become citizens and one day they will, take over from whites. It's the same mumbo-jumbo that they've been arguing for years. The same BS that the whites in South Africa used to justify apartheid. Same stuff. Let's continue. Pro-Trump student organizer and MAGA influencer Charlie Kirk has raised eyebrows in recent days with a series of tweets that range from a call to end all legal immigration from the third world to sharing a clip of an all-white town and wondering, why is it that it was so placid, lovely, and orderly? Yeah, of course. The argument being, since it's all white, it's orderly and placid, but if it wasn't white, it would be all disgusting and bad, because brown and black people automatically, by genetics, just naturally are disorderly and they're dirty. Do you guys see the racism in his words? The same day, Kirk also posted, "It's time to ban third world immigration, legal or illegal. We've reached our limit and we have a huge cultural, educational, housing, financial, and essential services problems to fix now because of it. We need a net zero immigration moratorium with a ban on all third worlders." Why is there a ban on the third world, but first world immigration is okay? I mean, if he says that we have educational problems, we don't have enough schools, if he says we don't have enough housing, we don't have enough financial problems, essential services, then why shouldn't we ban all immigration? Why is it only to the third world? Oh, white immigration's great, but brown and black immigration's not so good. What do we call that, people? On top of xenophobia, starts with an R, ends with an M. Racism. This guy was a racist. This is not like he made it. Oh God, he said a statement that could be misconstrued as racist. He was repeatedly racist, horribly racist, and we're gonna get to that. This was not an idle opinion. This guy was massively influential. This guy was dangerous to my life, to my wife's life, to my kids' life, to the lives of anybody who was not a white person. We'll get to that. On blacklisting, there's also an array of podcasts hosted by Kirk and other conservative figures and a professor watch list to label instructors who discriminate against conservative students and advance leftist propaganda. So he was into blacklisting professors. He was into the McCarthy period style of labeling people. What's leftist propaganda? Well, we already know that this guy doesn't even know what's anti-West, anti-Christian something. Everybody who is against what he doesn't like is anti-Christian, anti-West, anti-Israel, anti-capitalism, anti-everything, right? So advancing leftist propaganda. What is leftist propaganda exactly? That's just such a catch-all term. Are we going to trust, or were we to trust this guy when he was alive to be able to be the arbiter of what was appropriate education and what was leftist propaganda? And if you were not giving the appropriate education to him, so he was going to write down a blacklist, you put you on a professor watch list so that you had problems as a professor being hired in other universities or being hired at the one you were in. Oh, that there's no effects, there's no consequences to his speech. Yeah, there is. To all those professors on that list, there was definitive consequences. So when people say we have to respect people's opinions, not when they harm others. Not when they harm others. When speech leads to a professor's watch that harms real people's life, we don't have to respect that freedom of opinion. We don't have to say your opinion's okay. You have your disagreements. No, we don't. No, we don't. The limits of tolerance, we're going to get to that. There's a Venn diagram of tolerable opinion and behaviors. Once you're out of that Venn diagram, when your opinion, your behavior leads to the harm of other human beings, that's it. That's where your opinion has zero respect in my book. Let's get to that. He was part of a handful of Trump insiders tasked last fall with administering loyalty tests to prospective hires for senior posts at the Pentagon and within the intelligence agency. More recently, Kirk, now 31, was one of a number of loyalists of President Trump's appointed to the boards of the military academies in the United States. Kirk was appointed to the Air Force Academy Board of Visitors, charged with inquiring into, among other things, the Academy's curriculum instruction. What made this community college dropout capable or qualified to be administering loyalty tests to prospective hires at the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies? What did he know about intelligence? What did he know about the military? He was even rejected by West Point. A West Point reject is going to be overseeing the Air Force Academy and administering investigations into the curriculum instruction for what? What are they looking for in the curriculum and the election? What the Seven Mountains mandate was about, making sure that the education fulfills or fits within this really small square called white supremacy, Christian nationalism. If it's against white supremacy and Christian nationalism, that's not appropriate curriculum. If it teaches respect for others, multiculturalism in the sense that this is a nation with all types of people and all types of people could be citizens and all types of people could serve the military, no, that's woke, that's wrong. We're going to remove that. This is the guy that you guys were expressing sympathy about and empathy about. Let's talk about the Turning Point, his organization. A former national field director of Turning Point named Crystal Clanton, for instance, once texted a colleague, "I hate black people, like fuck them all." Turning Point. Remember, this is the field director of Turning Point. This is the organization that Charlie Kirk ran, that made into this big behemoth. Still gonna feel sympathy for this guy? Sympathy and empathy for him? After releasing the Professor Watch List, Kirk and Turning Point USA began booking appearances with alt-right neo-Nazis like Milo Yiannopoulos. These campus appearances led to massive and sometimes violent protests on campuses. After Charlottesville, white supremacists and neo-Nazis flocked to Turning Point USA events on college campuses and elsewhere, looking to fight with counter-protesters. Kirk did nothing to separate himself or Turning Point USA from them. After Charlottesville, white supremacists and neo-Nazis flocked the TPUSA events on college campuses. In fact, many of TPUSA's field organizers embraced the white supremacists in their midst, so much so that the media started taking note. If you are hosting white supremacists on a podcast, you're a white supremacist. You're a racist. And if your programs attract white supremacists and neo-Nazis to come to your events, of all the people, your friends, all a bunch of white people who hate other people, who are white supremacists and neo-Nazis, I got news for you. That's a white supremacist. That's a Nazi. That's a racist. Charlie Kirk was a white supremacist. Charlie Kirk was a Nazi. Charlie Kirk was a racist. And the people who came to him because they liked what he had to offer them. Why you, black person, Latino person, are expressing sympathy for this man? You never expressed sympathy for the 3 Democrats who got killed by Republicans a few months ago. You haven't expressed much sympathy for all the kids, especially the 3 that got shot today. Yes, today. Donald Trump put the flags at half-mast, not for the 3 kids who got shot today. Kids. He put it at half-mast for Charlie Kirk and made an Oval Office declaration. An Oval Office pronouncement from the president to honor the life of a white supremacist racist, but not for the 3 children who died today. Does that seem kind of normal to you? It doesn't seem normal to me. There's something wrong with an administration movement when it seems to glorify a completely justifiably proven racist extremist like Charlie Kirk, but it won't do for the 3 children who were there. How important was Charlie Kirk? In little over a decade, he has transformed the TPUSA group from a campus-based network of anti-woke teenagers into a far-right powerhouse and fundraising behemoth, able to entice Trump to headline 2 Turning Point events this month alone, including the Detroit People's Convention. Offstage, Kirk has had a seismic impact on the Republican Party at both the state and national level. Now, in the thick of a historically critical presidential election, Kirk is aspiring to go one bigger. Kirk's outside influence on the Republican Party is seen nowhere more clearly than in Arizona, where TPUSA has been headquartered since 2018. In a few short years, the group has transformed the Arizona legislature by replacing moderate Republicans with far-right Trump acolytes. Turning Point has become toxic in Arizona, said Tyler Montag, an Arizona-based Republican strategist. We're not talking about a Democrat or a socialist no, we're talking about a strategist, a Republican strategist saying, Turning Point, Charlie's organization, has become toxic in Arizona. They've helped to cement an extreme worldview, creating anger that in turn generates political energy that they harness. That's their game. Their game was manipulating angry white people. He didn't even respect the white people that he supposedly spoke to. He hates people of color. He hates third worlder. He hates women. He hates gays. And he uses white people. Gullible and dumb and angry white people. He uses them. He used to use them. Mejor dicho. That's what Charlie Kirk was. Not even the white people that supposedly were on his side. No, you weren't. He was using you, harnessing your anger and your ignorance. Republican strategists saying this. Don't believe me, believe them. Where Arizona went, now goes the National Republican Party. Over the past 2 years, Kirk has turned his sights onto the country's Republican Party establishment, ejecting RNC members judged to be disconnected with grassroots conservatives. In the exact same way Turning Point ousted Rusty Bowers, Kirk was credited as a key figure in forcing out Ronna McDaniel as chair of the Republican National Convention. Her departure came in a night of the long knives that saw leadership of the Republican Party transferred to Trump loyalists, including the former president's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump. Having established himself as a kingmaker within the National Republican orbit, Kirk can no longer hide behind the label of a student activist. He's playing with the adults now. Charlie Kirk was not some isolated, he just has an opinion. He has his own viewpoint. He was a foundational chess piece in the chess game of white supremacist domination in the USA. He used his well-oiled Turning Point USA organization to essentially assist Donald Trump in transforming the Republican Party into a fascist party, into a white supremacist, Christian nationalist, fascist party. And we can owe Charlie Kirk, Stephen Miller, and other figures like them, we should owe them applause for that. This is what they did. This is their baby. He was no longer a student activist. He was playing with the adults now. This is the man that you guys are showing sympathy, respect, and let's honor his life. And so sad that he's passed away. The same guy that was very responsible for the policies that are making your family suffer. If you're Latino and you've been stopped with ICE Gestapo, thank Charlie Kirk. Thank him for the creation of a toxic, noxious, hateful environment in this country. Him and Stephen Miller. The Nazi regime had figures that helped Hitler develop the ideology of the regime. Hermann Goering, Joseph Goebbels, and others. These are the Joseph Goebbels and the Hermann Goerings, or the Heinrich Himmlers of this regime. The people who are making Trump, or we can identify as the ideologues of the regime, Charlie Kirk. He was one of the most important ones. You are revering one of the most important racists and fascists of the last 10 years in the United States. This is the man that you are expressing sympathy and empathy about. His death today. Now that we know and we have a clear vision of who is Charlie Kirk, let's get to the issue of liberal sympathy. I think as liberals, we often have a tough time dealing with these type of cases because the liberal mindset is that above all, we are liberals because we want to help other people on all issues. I am a liberal because I want other human beings to have housing, food on the table, health care. I want to have rights, norms, and laws defended. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in a multicultural, multi-ethnic, diverse democracy. I believe in open participation, but I also believe in responsibility in terms of what you say and how you say it, having candor and respect and tact to other people. I believe in civilized discourse, but I also expect civilized behavior and belief in return. And the thing with the liberals in the United States is that we are so tolerant. You know, there was a saying that Bill Maher said. I hate to quote Bill Maher because Bill Maher has become toxic for me. But at the time when Bill Maher was okay, he once said, "Don't be so tolerant that you tolerate the intolerant." And the biggest problem of the Democratic Party in the United States and of liberals in general is that we are so good We expect and see the best in others, or we try to always, we have this savior mindset that we're trying to save people from evil. If we can only reach them, if we can only talk to them, if we can only outstretch our hand, if we can only be patient, if we can only express things logically, if we can talk to them, we can reason to them. We can't reason with people who have already decided that they want to dominate you and your families. There is a big difference between 1960s or 1950s or 1970s Republican and Democrat politics, where you could be a Republican and you could be a Democrat and you could have a lively debate on television about where you wanted to lead the country. And at the end of the debate, both people involved were respectful conservatives, somebody like a George Will or a William Buckley, if you will, could sit down with Noam Chomsky or sit down with Foucault or sit down with Malcolm X or sit with somebody else and sit down later after the acrimonious debate. And even the debates were not acrimonious. They were more respectful, and eat meal and break bread with them. That's not the world we're living in right now. Today's Republican Party is not the same Republican Party of before. That ended in 2016. We're in the middle of a fascist transformation of the United States of America. The Republican Party, which is a fascist party, has control of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the Supreme Court, or the judicial branch. The Supreme Court continues to knock down all very sensibly decided district court and appeal court decisions, which are doing their best to try to defend normalcy and the norms and the rules and the laws that we have been accustomed to living in a multicultural, diverse, fair, balanced constitutional republic. We have been used to it, these laws, this jurisprudence, this precedent. And the Supreme Court, making these extremely illogical arguments, has destroyed all of them, not based on law, based on the fact that they have 6 justices. It's power. It's not law governing their decisions. It's the exercise of power, ill-gotten negative power. The latest decision decided by the Supreme Court was that in LA, ICE could racially profile. I mean, after over 20, 30 years of fighting racial profiling in all the major police departments in the United States and essentially winning that battle, essentially getting police to police neighborhoods in a fair way and not mistreat Latinos and black people just on the basis of their skin or the basis of their last name or the basis of their accent or the language. Now the Supreme Court essentially gave carte blanche, complete approval for ICE Gestapo to stop any Latino. Maybe they'll stop me because I'm wearing a guayabera. Maybe they'll stop me because they see my name on my license that says Gonzalez. Whatever the reason. It's open season with Latinos. This is the product of this Republican fascist party. It's qualitatively different than anything the Democratic Party has done. I hate these equivalent arguments that people use when they say that when it was Biden, they lived in tyranny too. What tyranny? What did Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party ever do to white people in this country? At what point did the administration of Democrats established destructive secret police against them in their neighborhoods, against their families? When did that ever happen? It's BS, it's bullshit. White people had it as good as any other time. The economy was doing great. We all know that now. I mean, people are figuring it out now, but for a while they thought that Biden's economy was horrible. No, Biden's economy was really good. It was the envy of the developed world. They had recovered faster than any other economy after the COVID. At no point were anybody, Christians or whites, under attack in the Biden administration. What they call being under attack, meaning I am not allowed to dominate others. Since I can't impose my Christianity on others, I feel like I'm being attacked because I'm a Christian. That's what they called being attacked as a Christian. As a Christian. So I would like to know what was so bad around their time that equivalates Democrat governing to Republican governing for the last 7 months. There is no equivalence. We've had a very normal centrist party. I can't even say it's totally progressive. Centrist political party who follows the constitutional law, who follows rules and norms and the fair play and the switch of power between the parties when there's elections. And then we had a party that has for already 10 to 15 years, since the Tea Party, planned out a total takeover of the United States so that white supremacist Christian nationalists could implement Project 2025 and implement the Seven Mountains Mandate of white supremacist control of the executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch, media, education, and business. They are not here to share power with you. They are not here to debate things civilly with you. They are here to take power definitively, forever, perpetually, to condemn black people to the perpetual slavery that they think that you guys are supposed to live according to the biblical mandate of Canaan. They are there in power to make sure LGBT people are criminalized because you guys are groomers of sexual groomers of children for sexual abuse. Remember? If you're a Latino, they don't care about you. You are a third worlder. You bring problems to the USA. I want to expel all 30 million of you. Charlie Kirk's words. This is the MAGA movement. In a nutshell, the MAGA movement is a white supremacist Christian nationalist movement. It's as bad as the fascist regime in Germany. The only thing is they haven't been able to sweep away all the constitutional protections. They've gone little by little breaking apart whatever they can with the help of the Supreme Court and with the complete silence and complicity of the legislative branch in the hands of Republicans. But the day that they're able to completely sweep it away and they have military power, because they do have military power, that's the day when you'll start seeing the beginnings of the transformation to a very Nazi Germany outlook to this country. And I like to remind people who don't know history, Nazi Germans did not go from 1930, immediately 1931, killing the Jews. It didn't work like that. It took over 10 years to get around 1940, around there, 1941, when they started beginning the final solution, when they started killing Jews and communists and other people. It took 10 years for them to get here. We've only been 7 months in the second Trump regime, this accelerated Project 2025 regime, which is basically a program, a politically declared program, and very discussed by all the political figures of the time, a program to establish a white supremacist Christian nationalist movement. And guess who was a prime defender, manipulator, and propaganda artist for this 2025 program in the MAGA movement? You guessed it, Charlie Kirk. I was about to say Frank Stallone from SNL jokes, but this is too serious for that joke. You guessed it, Charlie Kirk. I think one thing that torments liberals is this duality of this clash of principles versus observable, tangible feeling. I'm trying to think of the words to use. Our innate conviction and principle is that we want to see the good in others, and we don't want to see any human being suffer. So we don't want to support the killing of anybody. That's our innate view. On the flip side of things, I am a believer that there are certain human beings that because of their actions, not their words, beyond their words, their actions and words together have become a tangible danger for other human beings. And when people move from just a regular human being with free opinions to having a tangible movement or tangible consequences for other human beings, you forfeit your right to demand that the people who are oppressed by your tangible consequences, what you do, the consequences of your action, the people who are oppressed by your decisions have a right to respond to you in kind. And this, possibly, we don't know yet, is what happened to Charlie Kirk. We don't know if it was a disgruntled mental person. We don't know if it was a leftist activist who was angry with his viewpoints. We also don't know if it was a false flag operation by right-wingers to try to develop, national fervor and patriotism in favor of Trump's fascist policies? We don't know yet. We're still waiting for that investigation. But what I can say is, it is not my desire to see political violence in the United States, but it is my historical observation, my certainty as a historical observer, that this is where we're headed, because this is where the fascist political program of the MAGA movement has taken this country to. It is not an option to tell people in the center and in the left to grin and bear it and to accept fascist domination. That is not realistic. The center and the left is going to fight the right. If we are finding ourselves in incremental steps towards civil war and political violence in the United States, it is because all the warnings given by people, by sane, better adjusted, well-adjusted people in the United States, warning against the rise of political violence, was ignored. Not only was it ignored, it was fanned. The flames of political violence were fanned by people like Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, and yes, Charlie Kirk. Those flames is what led to the death of the 3 political representatives, I believe it was from Minnesota, who were murdered by a right-wing serial killer who methodically went to each one of their homes to try to kill them. So it's not that we are happy about a person's death, but at the very same time, we don't express, at least some of us, don't express sympathy for the death of Charlie Kirk, because for us, he forfeited the demand for a moral outlook to his life, that we should honor his life as a human being. The moment that he disdained millions and millions of other people as subhumans whose lives do not matter. When he did that, with everything that he's done with Turning Point USA, for me, he forfeited the right to ask of me and other people like me, Latinos, blacks, LGBT, to please respect the value of his life as a human being, to please have empathy for his life, to please have sympathy for his life. In plain terms, Charlie Kirk was not a good man. Charlie Kirk was not a good man. It's sad on purely looking upon it, separating yourself from the political viewpoint. It's sad that a person would live only 31 years on this earth. He was a boy. He could have been, one of my students. Could have even been a son of mine, because I'm 46. If he was 31, I could have had a son of 15. He could have been a son of mine. And he wasted a life following a path of hate, cementing a path of hate, creating a path of hate, amplifying voices of anger, of resentment, and of hate, of destruction, of oppressing others, creating this worldview, or this warped worldview that the USA should be a Christian white supremacist nation. He wasted it all, literally to the last moment. At what point did this man live anything in his life that wasn't anger, resentment, and hatred? He lives the first 20 years of his life, anger, resentment, and hatred, specifically because he's not good enough to enter West Point and Hampshire College. He drops out. And then he spends the next, 10 more years, from 21 to 31, building upon that resentment and hatred, that trauma, to create what was described as a Republican behemoth, making him as a kingmaker in the party. Because everything the Republican Party is doing now to the country, we can ascribe the blame to people like Steve Bannon, to Stephen Miller, to Charlie Kirk, the ideologues, the people who helped plan, because Trump's not smart enough for this. These are the brains behind the figurehead. So knowing this, knowing that people like Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk are the brains behind the figurehead, they're the Himmlers, the Goebbels, and the Goerings of this Nazi regime, why are you asking us, people are watching this video, why are you asking us to have sympathy and empathy for this man? He had no empathy for people like me. He has no empathy for people of my country. He would think I'm a third worlder savage. Why? Because I'm a Puerto Rican, I'm a Latino, I'm not white, and I don't have a religion that's Christian. And my religion is too weird for him. probably thinks I don't eat with utensils, so I'm not a real American. I think that we have the right as liberals to say enough is enough. That there is discourse and opinions that are beyond the acceptable Venn diagram. You guys ever seen Venn diagram, the circles that meet together? There's certain discourse in the middle that we can all agree, but when you're out of those circles, you are out of what's acceptable discourse. And I think in this country, we need to have a very clear discussion, like the Germans did after World War II, that there's certain discourse, arguments, and viewpoints that are beyond the pale, beyond the what is acceptable, that we do not have to give any credence, space, funding, or even respect, that they should be disdained and publicly tarred and feathered. Anybody who utters these type of despicable, out of the Venn diagram opinions. But I'm not so much concerned about opinions. He is a dirty, racist, white supremacist. We know this already. It's not what I say, it's what he said. He said it. He garnered the consequences for his language. I'm not so much concerned about that. I am concerned about the tangible effects of those type of speech. I want to make a reminder to people who have no historical knowledge. During the Rwandan massacre, the country of Rwanda in Africa, the main cause of the massacre was ascribed and was determined to be that Hutu nationalists used their radio programs to politically provoke and charge and manipulate the minds of the Hutu population, which, filled with racist and ethnic anger against the Tutsis, after hearing these radio shows, the radio DJs were the most responsible for that massacre. After hearing the inflammatory, provocative, race and anger and ethnic hatred based discourse of these radio stations, they went out and killed 1 million Tutsis, often macheting them to death. I saw videos of this. For one of my classes at UMass, I saw actual footage of the murders that would happen at the villages and in the streets. People, women, children, babies being hacked to death at machetes. I saw this with my eyes. And all because of the power of the word. The power of organized, hateful speech and discourse. And because I know this, because I've studied a lot of this in my political sciences courses, I see Charlie Kirk from a very different viewpoint. This is not a person we should respect their viewpoint. He just has a different viewpoint. We shouldn't resort to political violence because we have a disagreement. It's not a disagreement. It's a disagreement if you and I have a discussion. We can argue about any point, and at the end of the night, well, you can go live in your house, I go in my house, and we're okay. Nobody dominates anybody. But Charlie Kirk wielded extreme power. His words became the policy of a regime that then implements it on me and other Latinos and other blacks and other gays and other Muslims and people from other countries. And then it becomes dangerous, destructive, and oppressive to not one person, millions of people. Millions of people in the United States have suffered because of Charlie Kirk, Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, and other ideologues and the MAGA movement. Don't tell us to ignore that fact. Second, state violence is worse than individual violence. Everybody who is now suffering under the oppressive fascist regime of the MAGA movement is suffering under state violence, emotional and many times physical and legal and economic, because they can get you fired, they can get you in jail, they can send you to Alligator Alcatraz, to Secot in El Salvador. They can do a whole bunch of things against you. They can stop you if you're Latino. They can ask you for your identification. If you refuse, they send you to a facility instead of, as a citizen, saying, no, I just don't want to show you my identification. The Fourth Amendment gives me the right to refuse that. So there's tangible things that are hurting us. We have a right, the people who are oppressed in this regime have a right to express beyond just viewpoints, because I think that is ineffectual. I think that enough protest and writing letters like Chuck Schumer and appealing to the better angels and the morality of people are not working. It did not work in China. It did not work in Russia, where even saying something against the war criminalizes you with 30 years of prison. It didn't work and doesn't work in Kim Il Sung's North Korea. It didn't work for South Africans for many years. Even with all the nonviolent protests, they had to suffer for over 20, 30 years before finally world events pushed South Africa to have to remove apartheid. I don't know how to say these following words. I don't think anybody celebrates the violence, but I will say it was inevitable. When you live a life of hatred, when you live a life of amplifying hateful, domineering ideologies against other human beings, you invite the other human beings to fight back, to return your hatred back to you. And that's the karmic principle. That's karma. What you give out, what you put out, comes back to you threefold. It's understood in every culture of the world. I don't think that Charlie Kirk's life should be celebrated. I don't think that Charlie Kirk's life should be honored. I don't think Charlie Kirk's life should be revered or thought in a positive light. He should be pitied for having wasted 31 years of his life and then dying in the way he died. He should be opposed because his viewpoints should be opposed. He should not be given any credence. And furthermore, we should learn from the experience of the Hutus against the Tutsis and of people like Charlie Kirk here in the United States, Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, that people with radio shows, podcasts have a lot of power, particularly in a country of a lot of disaffected people who are easily manipulated. The entire MAGA movement is one big exercise in the manipulation of a people who feel disaffected. And Hitler was the first to show the world the power, the ability to convince an entire nation to sign on to a racist, destructive program of destruction of other countries and the implementation of an Aryan race, superior Aryan race discourse, to putting them, of course, on top of the totem pole and everybody else on the bottom as a pyramid, as servants to them. Because that's what they did to Russian women. That's what they did to the French when they took over France. And Charlie Kirk is proposing a new neo-Nazi, a neo-fascist principle and program for the United States, or was. This was not just your garden variety, just a guy you disagreed with. This was one of the key figures in the MAGA movement that is opposed to everything that a Latino, a black person, an LGBT, a Muslim, an immigrant person should believe in. This was not our friend. This guy was not good. And I think we need to keep that in mind. I'm going to end the video here. We don't know what's going to happen in this country in the next days. I don't think it's going to get worse in the sense that I don't think this country is going to get into radicalized incrementation of Nazi policies. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think it's important to know who Charlie was so that we can put his life and death in the proper context and the proper understanding. If we didn't have any sympathy for Himmler, Goering, Goebbels, or Hitler, we shouldn't have the same sympathy, the same exact level of lack of sympathy, or even anger or demand for them to be put in a Nuremberg war tribunal. We all demanded that. Our grandparents who fought in World War II demanded that. Our grandparents didn't have sympathy for bad, evil people. They didn't debate evil people. They didn't have civic discussions with evil people. They went there with guns and tanks and killed them. That's what they did. We can't have this inconsistent behavior of, well, it was okay when our grandparents did it, but now it's totally wrong. And if you believe that way, there's something wrong with you. You're evil. No, I think good people with good hearts, when they spot evil, should not give evil a chance to pine. The moment we hear an argument that is race-based, discriminatory, it should be stopped right there and then. It should not be given credence. It should not be given a chance to explode like Turning Point USA did. And there's a discrepancy between our revering of World War II grandparents of saying that they fought the good fight against the evil Nazis, of playing video games with the Nazis are always the evil guy. There's always a discrepancy between that mindset and the tolerance that we are showing with modern day Nazis, modern day fascists. And that's not only me who said it, General Milley said it, General Kelly said it. Kamala Harris in an interview on the radio asked her, hey, these guys are fascists. I said, yeah, they're fascists. It's Madeleine Albright called them fascist before she passed away, the Secretary of State before. I'm not talking about crazy people. I'm talking about people who are highly politically educated and who had really high political positions. And these people called Trump and the MAGA movement fascist in nation. Fascist to the core, I think Miley said. I think that was his terminology, General Miley. So why are we showing tolerance for the fascists? Charlie Kirk was a fascist, was one of the prime fascist supporters. Steve Bannon, fascist. Stephen Miller, fascist. Trump, fascist. I'm going to leave it there. I think you guys have heard enough. I'm tired to myself. But I needed to express my sentiments on it because it was bothering me inside. We don't need to show sympathy for people who wouldn't show any sympathy for us. We shouldn't show any basic humanity to people who would have absolute no problem advocating publicly for us to be put in concentration camps like Alligator Alcatraz. We shouldn't show sympathy for people who would kick all 30 million of us, Latinos, out of the country. I think we need to exercise a little bit more balance and a little bit more, discernment. That's the word. We should be able to discern who are the people that we will extend sympathy and human respect and compassion and empathy, and then what other human beings we think have completely forfeited their right to have their lives be meaningful and considered by others. When you don't care about our lives, we shouldn't have to be forced to care about your life or to show publicly some kind of a sympathy or an empathy that you would have not shown to us. And that's my basic position. But in order to get to that basic position, which is very, I think, reasonable, I needed to show you guys who was Charlie Kirk. There is no need for us to have to express sympathy or empathy for this man. What we should do is, as a nation, collectively learn about the dangers of this hatred. We should continue calling for discourse, of course, civilized behavior, of course, yes, but with a critical eye and without being naive. This is not the time for healing. This is not the time for reflection. This is not the time for let's kind of come together. That's what happens when you're reconstructing a country after a fascist downfall. We are not there yet. We are in the thick of the fascism. First, we need to destroy the fascists by any means necessary. And when the fascist project is destroyed and we put the fascists on trials and we take care of them, then we can approach the rest of the country and say, what are we going to do to make sure this never happens again? What are we going to do to reestablish constitutional order? What are we going to do to establish norms and decency and ethics? We all want that. I think every person in this country wants that. At least those that are sane-minded. But we're not there yet. We can't put the cart before the horse. First, we need to remove the Charlie Kirks from power. And Charlie Kirk essentially got karmic blowback. For years he said that he had no problems with people being killed by guns as long as that was the price to pay for everybody to have a second amendment right to guns. He didn't care about the lives of other people, most definitely not the lives of brown or black people being killed. Couldn't care less. So why are we caring that he got shot? All the hate and vitriol that he spewed out for 10 years was concentrated in this metal bullet that pierced his neck. That's what happened to Charlie Kirk. Karma came back to him.